Hi, sisters. Welcome to the Body Ally podcast, where we learn how to spread the Body Ally movement, where we invite other women to join with us to no longer battling with our bodies, but to instead become an ally with them, to accept them as the gift that God intended, learning how to pursue health goals, not in an effort to prove value, but as an act of love. And I'm your host, Kerrie Nygard. We're going to get into today, what is a transitional snacker? What is that? What does that term even mean? And if I am a transitional snacker, how do I stop being one if I want to? Let's dive into it. So what's a transitional snacker? This is something that I discovered that I was years ago, where every time I would shift from one project or focus in my day to another, I would desire to eat. So for example, if I went from like paying bills to cleaning up dishes, I felt like I needed to go to the cupboard or the fridge to eat something first. Or anytime I went from being in the house doing something to going outside to doing something, or coming back in from doing something to coming inside, or to leave the house to get in the car to go run errands. Anytime there was a transition in my day from one focus to another, I would have an urge to eat food. And it used to be in my dieting days that I would still eat food, but I would just get limited on which foods I would eat. So rather than grabbing, crackers or chips or chocolate, I'd be grabbing carrots. In fact, there was a time, you guys will like this. There was a time, this is when we lived in Florida. So years ago, we lived in Florida for a few years when my husband was doing some stuff for his schooling. And this was a time where I was really restrictive. I had baby number 4 and I was really into working out. I mean, I've been in working out a long time, but I was doing like 2 a days and I was really counting my calories and being really restrictive. I was full on diet mode. And I still had this habit of grabbing something to eat in between transitions in my day. And I was a stay-at-home mom at that time. I didn't have a business that I was running. It was all about kids, all little kids, all day long, all the time. And so not only that, but I was overstimulated a good part of the time, mentally and also physically. Lots of touch, lots of sound, lots of things pulling unpredictable things. Children are unpredictable, pulling on my attention. And so that would also add another layer or dimension to this, right? Well, instead of grabbing those types of foods, I would grab carrots, something that had a lot of crunch. And so I grabbed handfuls of carrots. And you might think, well, that's no big deal of grabbing handfuls of carrots, throughout the day. The carrots are good for you. Well, I was eating so many carrots that I turned a little orange. And we flew back to Washington to visit. And one of my sister-in-laws says, Kerrie, are you putting fake tanner on? Because you look orange. And I was like, no, I'm not using fake tanner. I'm like, I live in Florida, I've been out in the sun, but she's like, you look orange. And I sat there and I was thinking about it and I'm like, oh, I'm eating like 1 to 2 pounds of carrots, like every day or every other day. Like I'm going through a lot of carrots and I took on an orange hue and my fingertips were orange and my skin just had this orange hue to it. Now, and why was it carrots? Well, because in my mind, I'm like, carrots are safe food. And that crunch, that really strong crunch thing was very stimulating or kind of reset my nervous system. It helped me get out aggression. It helped kind of reset my nervous system. And so the point isn't that if I'm eating good food or bad food, because there is no good or bad food. There's only food that allows us to feel good or bad in our body. The question is, am I making the choices to eat whatever food that I'm eating for reasons that I like and for reasons that actually are taking me in the long term where it is that I want to go with my health? And this answer is no, because even though I was eating carrots, it was turning me orange and the carrots were keeping me from learning and being aware of what I was doing and being able to manage my emotions. And then one day I realized, I don't know if I had heard something or read something or if I just realized I'm a transitional snacker. Every time I go from one thing to another, I have an urge to grab food, whether it's carrots, whether it's chips, whatever it may be. And so I'm going to talk about 3 ways to stop being a transitional snacker if this is you. Now, if you notice that this only happens when you get home from work and you're hungry and it's the end of the day, I wouldn't call that transition snacking. I would call that probably emotional mixed with true hunger. And that's something to strategize around and to figure out. But on this particular podcast, I'm talking about true transition snacking, which is even if you're at work, when you go from being in your office to like the conference room or from one meeting to the next or from one project to another, you feel the urge to have a snack first. Not because you're hungry, but because it kind of fills in that buffer, that discomfort when you take your focus from one thing to another. So if that's you, here are 3 tips to help you stop becoming a transitional snacker. Okay, here we go. Number 1, just being aware that you do it. Just me becoming aware that, oh, I'm transition snacking, so that when I would have the urge, I'd be like, oh, that's that transition thing. I'll just keep going on with my day. That was really helpful for me. Just becoming aware that I was doing it really helped me. So that's the first one. Awareness is key. Okay. The second one is to use the word or. Or is a really powerful word when it comes to our brain. Why? Because our brain, if we tell ourselves stop or don't or can't, our brain, our lower survival obsessed brain, our unconscious brain, doesn't look at the qualifier in front of the theme of the sentence, right? So if you say, don't eat ice cream, your brain doesn't look at the don't. Your subconscious brain looks at the eat ice cream, right? And so you try not to do something actually intensifies your desire to do it. Have you ever noticed when we don't diet anymore, but back in your dieting days, did you ever notice that when you decided to go on a diet, all of a sudden your desire for food would go up and you'd think about food so much more just deciding to go on a diet? And that's because you taught your brain, without realizing it, to focus in more on food, not less. Okay, so how do we use the word or? Well, when you say, oh, we can eat the food, and then you put something in the blank, it gives your brain something to put in its place. So you cannot get rid of an undesirable thought just by saying, stop thinking that, stop thinking that. Like if I said, don't think about elephants, the first thing you're going to think about is elephants, because that's how our brain works. That's how thinking works. It's a constant stream, right? Of either consciousness or unconsciousness. And we are not our thoughts, by the way. Our brain is always thinking thoughts. We only become the thoughts that we hold on to and believe are true. So you can just view your thoughts. In fact, there's meditation around merely just viewing your thoughts, noticing them come and noticing them go, and detach yourself from them. You are not always the entity thinking the thoughts. Our brain is just always thinking thoughts. You are the being that's able to observe the thoughts. That's who you are, divinely. Okay? I believe that we are eternal beings having a human experience. Okay? And so the part of us that is eternal, the part of us that will continue on after this life, is the part that the divine part of our consciousness is the part that is able to view that thought, view those thinkings separate from yourself. The part of you that can think about your thoughts, that's who you are. The part of you that can observe your thoughts, that's the part that you are. And then the thoughts that you adapt as true and you hold on to is what creates your results and then becomes part of your identity, becomes who you are. But other than that, thoughts are just a constant stream of meanings, possible meanings that you can choose to reject or keep. So how do you get rid of darkness? By light. So using the word or is giving an option to our brain, right? It allows our brain to know what to do instead of. So instead of saying, no, we're not going to transition snack. No transition snacking. We say, well, we could grab food right here, brain, or we could continue on with our day. That's it. We could do that. Yep. We could grab food. Oh, we're doing that. First, we acknowledge, yep, I'm doing that transition snacking thing. We can do that. Or we can do this thing, whatever it was you intended to do. So for me, back in the day, it looked like, oh, yeah, we can grab food before we go out the door, or we can just go out the door and get in the car and go to where we were going to go without the food. Now, if we're legit hungry, well, then we need to have a meal. We don't need to grab handfuls of things. We want to honor our body's needs for nourishment, and we sit and have a meal whenever possible. When that's possible, we honor those hunger cues appropriately. But if we're just grabbing things mindlessly because of being a transition snacker or that habit, acknowledge it and then say, oh, we can do that. Or we can continue on with our day. I can go to the other room and do this project, or I can, right? Okay, that's tip number 2, right? So number 1 is acknowledgement is really helpful. Number 2 is use the word or so that your brain knows what to do instead. And then the third one is that you may not even need the third one for a good part of the time. The first one takes care of a lot of it. The second one takes care of a lot of transition snacking. And the third one is if you notice, you use the word or and your brain feels really attached, not just a little bit attached, but really attached to eating the food. Like it feels desperate to eat the food, or it just feels really important. Like, no, when you try to do the or we could go do that. And your brain's like, no, we must eat the food. Like it feels really important. We want to treat that like a check engine light. So, when you're driving in the car and you're going along and your check engine light comes on, you don't ignore that. At least if you are a good car owner, you don't ignore that. And it could be something as simple as the gas cap not being on tight, or it could be something much deeper, like a real issue that needs to be resolved in your engine, or it will stop running, right? And the way you do that is you get a diagnostics run on it so you know where the issue is. So the same thing, you're not a car and your body's not a car, but I want you to this is an analogy, I want you to treat it like that. When you feel a deep connection to eating the food, and I mean deep, like not just an urge, but like a desperateness, a deep intensity to eat the food, this is a check engine light. This means that you need to investigate and ask a few questions, lean in. And ask yourself, I have a need here that I'm trying to get met through food. What is it that I actually need? Is it nervous system dysregulation? Am I feeling overstimulated? Am I feeling dysregulated? And I feel like I need to regulate and I'm trying to do that with food? Good to know. If that's the case, then let's actually regulate our nervous system. There's lots of ways to do that without food. Okay, am I feeling like I need to be validated? Like I need a reward in my life? Is my life feeling really hard and I need an escape? And I'm like, what meaning am I attaching to this food? Is this the way I get relief? Is this the way I get a reset? Is this the way that I get validation? There's some need that your brain has associated with eating that food. And if you can access the need, am I lacking human connection? Am I lacking companionship? And my brain is viewing the food as companionship? Am I lacking things to look forward to in my day? And my brain's using food to create happiness, to create joy, to create anticipation in my day? Well, that's trying to use food to satisfy a human need. Now, food does satisfy a human need, and it can be, you can be a normal eater and use food to satisfy a human need. But what we want to do is not be going to food to satisfy every human need, because it's not very good at it, by the way. If we're feeling stressed or confused, food doesn't solve for those things. Food solves for hunger. Sometimes food can bring comfort, warmth and nourishment, brings kind of a deeper, wholesome sense of comfort, right? And so I'm not talking about those times. I'm talking about when there's this desperation there and there's no true hunger. That's when we want to treat it like a check engine, like something's going on here. We have an unmet need. Let's lean in and diagnose it. Let's figure out what it is and then meet that need and fill that need in a way that actually satisfies. Okay, so that's the short and sweet of it. A transitional snacker is someone who feels the need to have a snack every time they transition from one thing to the next in their day. How do we stop doing it? First, awareness. Notice that we're doing it. That in of itself can unravel a good part of it. The second one is to use the word or to redirect your brain to know what to do instead. And then the third one is if 1 and 2 don't work, then we dig deeper on what need is it that I have attached, what meaning of getting a need met have I attached to eating this food, and let's actually satisfy it in the way that actually does satisfy. All right, I want you to check the show notes down below for any links to other free content that I give. There's also paid content. Also, please share this podcast with others and leave a review. When you leave reviews and when you share the podcast, when you download the podcast, it lets the algorithm know that this is important and that they should share this message with other women. Remember, you were not sent here to think about food and losing fat all the time. You were sent here to thrive and create and to live out God's plan for you. Thanks so much, ladies. Bye-bye.